Douglas,
Yeah.
tell me about yourself and what are your passions?
Oh, cool. Yeah, my passions is motivation, helping people achieve their goals in life. Really allowed me to start my own motivation channel, 140 Rule, whereby we focus on those elements, the things that come out in our everyday lives we can all learn from. So it's about each one teach one. It's a philosophy that I really push, and I encourage everybody to really have their goals mapped out. So that's my mindset.
In terms of the topic that we're discussing here, why are young people killing themselves? Why do you think this is?
It's a very complex situation when you pose a question such as why young people killing themselves. There's a whole host of reasons, but if you can just strip things back in terms of what happens in those societies whereby young people are killing each other and finding the most evasive way to do it, taking a knife and plunging it in someone else's body. What's the mindset that goes through a young person to do such a heinous act? Again, I would say people are products of their environment.
Yeah.
So what's happening in those environments? You find that they have what's called the code of the streets, and this is whereby in any environment whereby people are impoverished, you do have some respectable people in those scenarios, and everyone in those areas recognize respectable people who follow the law of the masses, as it were. But then there's an element there that abide by the code of streets, and that literally means do not snitch. It literally means that you take the law into your own hands because for whatever reason you have felt that the law is not working in your favor. The enforcement of the law via the police may be too aggressive, maybe too targeted, and you find that even filtering through in the type of education these young people have in schools as well. So they end up saying, look, we take care of our own in here. The problem with that mindset is it breeds criminality. It just breeds, and in such an environment, drugs are prevalent. The selling of drugs are prevalent, and so I'll always take a look at the code of the street and how it does have an impact on how the child perceives, or anyone in that environment perceives the outer world. They feel like they're left behind. So it's us versus them. The code of the streets equals crucifixion. This is how you are crucified. People in such environments are not mobile. They feel they can't even leave their ends. You know, West Coast, East Coast. They're not mobile people. So the whole point of crucifixion was to make sure you not, first and foremost, you can't walk anywhere. You're rooted to where you are. They do not travel up and down. Why? Because the code of the streets will dictate you don't step outside of your ends. If you do, you need to protect yourself. So again, crucifixion starts with your feet. Your feet then are nailed or they're bound, so you cannot move. What can your feet do? You know, the second one is when you bound your arms, like so. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, they might put a nail through the palm of your hand. Okay, again, if you look at the streets, what can your hands do? Can you build with your hands? You've got left hand, you've got right hand. What are these hands doing to help you get yourself out of this situation? A lot of these young people in these areas have no skills. Yeah, their hands can't build. They have no skills. On top of that, what then do they do in crucifixion? They put a bed of nails on your head. What are young people thinking? What thoughts are going through their heads at any given time? You know, what images are playing out through their heads? What sort of narrative do they have? Do they have a positive narrative on life and themselves? Are they aspirational? Chances are they're not. They can't think clearly. Not only now, you know, the individual cannot think clearly. Their hands can't build. They're not mobile. And the last thing, if you manage to survive 4 or 5 hours on the cross like that, they will then put a knife in the side there, and that will release your remaining life liquid.
If education is not showing them the path, and something within their social structure is showing them a different path in which they can make money, this becomes a bigger influence.
Sure, and exactly. So when as you grow up, and this is a conversation that transcends race,
Yeah.
it even transcends genders, because gangs, proliferation of gangs are both female based,
Yeah.
black, white, male, female. It's across the
It's
whole
across the
board.
board.
But what you find in those environments is, because they cannot see themselves in better positions.
Yeah.
Somebody that is able to live amongst them, that looks like them, that thinks like them, that pulls up in a nice car, that dresses in a nice way, even though they're getting fast money, is a far more influential role model to that individual than somebody that doesn't look like them, that maybe is in government, that's maybe in schools or bank, whatever it is. If you cannot see yourself, you cannot visualize yourself in a particular situation, it's very hard for you to then do the right things to get yourself in that position.
Yeah. We're talking things like area of deprivation. So some areas have less than other areas, almost like the difference between affluent areas and people in sub areas where financing, aid, government influence is lacking.
There's crime in every area.
Yeah.
Right?
We can both agree to that.
Yeah, the difference is this, I would say, is people who are coming from gated communities, who have access to more resources, they have a wider set of safety nets to prevent them, wanting to kill somebody with a knife. There's so many mechanisms that they can latch onto first before they get to that stage. When you're in an inner city, economically deprived area, those safety nets are not there. A lot of the times, young people are growing up in environments whereby there is violence. Violence is every day, and I hear it all the time in certain cultures, whereby they say, "Oh, it's in our culture to beat children," for example. To beat a child is act of aggression. And you got to ask yourself as parents, what are you getting out of the situation? And what is the child getting out of the situation? He's smacking a child and expecting the child to then eat their dinner as if nothing has happened. All what you're doing as a parent is teaching that child that actually that violence is normal. You can eat and after beating. So what do you think that child is going to do as they grow up, when they're faced with difficult situations, challenging situations whereby someone has mistreated them or they're perceived to be mistreated? As far as I'm concerned, if you get smacked, it's no big deal. So there's a lot of education in terms of parenting that a lot of groups have to be able to have those conversations and really address. It's 2019. If you cannot discipline your child without chastising the child, it's evidence that you as a parent are failing. You're failing to give that child enough instruments to manage their emotions and the behavior. You are failing as a parent to allow a child to accept differences of opinion, allow children to be critical thinkers, and be able to be rational beings on this planet. Because thinking of your emotions all the time always leads into some sort of confrontation, either yourself to somebody else or for object.
And that's funny because road rage doesn't matter how smart or clever you can be, if you allow your emotions to hijack you, the thought process there going forwards would be completely different from what you would think in hindsight. So you think back and you go, oh, why did I do that?
Exactly. And when we talk about self-reflection, a lot of people don't know how to reflect. We think back at situations and we romanticize what we're reflecting back on, whereby in this scenario you might have lost out, you might have been bullied, or whatever the case may be. We tend to reflect back whereby if you are being bullied, you reflect back as, I'll punch a bully this time, I'll do X, Y, and Z this time, but that's living in the past. You've got to also be thinking about the present and what you're going to do moving forward. So being able to reflect without bias, we all have a bias anyway, but being conscious of our bias is what this is about. Responsibility has two words to it: respond and ability. Now, if we have people in society that cannot respond because they have no ability to change their environment, they have no ability to change their circumstances, we have a problem. We as a collective have a big problem. So what society can do through government is make sure that if people are on welfare, if people are on benefits, is set at such a rate that it encourages people to go and work. Whilst there should be opportunities for them to find meaningful employment, if they're not employable in that particular moment, education has to be provided. And this is what it's about. It's a multi-factored approach. There's not one size fits all. Every community has its own set of unique situations. Through laws and the enforcement of these laws, ensure that fathers have access to their children.
See, this is going to lead into my last question, which was, how do you see the hope for the future, and how are we going to address these key things? But you were just going to say, your fathers having access to their children.
Every child should, if you work from the premise, every child has access, should have access to their mother and father. Now, if you know 1 in 2 relationships are going to fail anyway, statistically, that's what is evidenced. There's a lot of children that potentially do not have access to one of their parents.
Or both.
If you're raising a son, there are certain teachings, there's certain things you can only get from being around male role models. You know, and if you're going to restrict access to a father that wants to be there for their child, I just think the law should be far more harder on whoever's restricting that access, because you could have same-sex marriages, all of that, those types of things. So the laws have to be updated to reflect what's currently happening right now in society. Anyone that's not allowing a child to have access to a parent, they should be penalised financially, particularly in socially, economically deprived areas. With no access to the father, just builds more and more resentment, and then that can spill over into violence as they grow up.
Thank you again, Douglas, for having this conversation with us today, and I hope you guys tune in again for more content in this vein. We'll be looking at other issues, so please like, subscribe, put your comments down in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video, because it helps us make more content, and also click that bell button and you'll be notified when the next video is available. I'm Evie B.
Douglas Simon DJ for 140rule.com. We out. Download the free 140 Rule ebook from the 140rule.com website. The links are below.